Hello everyone. Today it's Sunday, February 2023. We are at the border of the 5th arrondissement in Paris. We're gonna cross the Seine River. Today it's a beautiful day to walk around. That's why you see there's so many people outside. And it's about 13 degrees Celsius. I will make sure to tell you how many degrees that's in Fahrenheit. I will start just going around here. As you can see, we are at the border of the 5th arrondissement in the left bank. That is the Saint-Michel Square. And right in front of us we have the Saint-Michel Bridge. So let's go around. There's many people today. Every time that there are a little bit of sunlight during the winter months, it is normal to believe that Paris is going to be incredibly crowded. And this is the case today. So we are right now in the Saint-Michel Bridge. If you can see over there, we can see Notre Dame de Paris. It's very interesting. This bridge, actually, people come here very often to take pictures, as the other bridge that you can see at the end of the screen. But this bridge is very interesting. I think for me, actually, has a very nice history. It was built around 1378, and it actually connects Ile de la Cite with the left bank, which is the part that belongs to the 5th arrondissement. And over there you can see, if I turn a little bit, that's the complex that belongs to the Palais. And this bridge has been rebuilt many times. It has been built in different materials like wood, but it also has been made in stone. And actually this is how it looks nowadays. And for me, it's one of my favorites, even though it's not very famous. It's because, very famous in comparison with the other ones, is because you can have this wonderful view of these extremely Parisian buildings, if we could say. But also there are all these buildings that are very interesting to see. You can see that's a very Parisian way to walk around. People don't have those bubble around definitions of personal space. So every time that you're walking, people that you don't know, even if it's not very crowded, they will try to touch a part of your arm or something. I don't think they do it particularly on purpose, but it's something that you have to get used to when you live in the city. So right there, right to my left, you can see there's already a big line of people. I don't know if you can read the red advertisement that is over there, but actually it says Sainte-Chapelle. That's the complex of Palais de la Cite. Actually, up there, there's a little part that you can see of this beautiful chapel. For me, it's actually one of my favorite monuments in Paris, and it's because it's beautiful. It have wonderful glasswork, but also it's interesting because it was built to host the I forgot the word, and I totally apologize. It is true that I don't speak English as often as I would like, but the crown of thorns, that was the crown of thorns, the Christ had. So the King Louis IX decided to get it and then bring it here. So they built this amazing church just to host that crown, but also some other interesting artifacts. If you're not very related to Catholicism, there's this practice in which people usually buy, rich people or kings used to buy artifacts that represented, for example, a part of one saint or an important figure of the Catholic Church. So I understand there were like more than 20 different relics. That's the name, relics for the Sainte-Chapelle. And over there you would find like drops of Christ's blood and hair of a saint, etc., etc. After the revolution, it stopped being a church and it became a place for archives, and nowadays it's basically a beautiful, beautiful building that is empty. It doesn't have necessarily all the beautiful objects that you could find in any of the other functioning Catholic churches. So right now we're on an island. We're on Ile de la Cite. So Ile de la Cite is in the Seine River, and we'll be passing soon enough to the right bank. One interesting piece of art is over here. If you can see, it's a very, very beautiful golden clock that it was built basically to operations a long time ago to keep track of the time. And actually, if I understand correctly, is the oldest clock in Paris that is still functioning. And you can find that right at the corner of Boulevard du Palais. So we're crossing the street right now, and as I cross the street, I am leaving the island, and this is Quai de la Corse. So it's a very beautiful part of the city to see the big buildings and monuments around. Right at the end you can see that's La Mairie de Paris, and La Mairie it'll be the city hall, but that's the main city hall because I remind you there's 20 districts in Paris and each one has a city hall sub-district, I would say, or a sub-city hall in each one of them, but this is the main one, so this is the central one. So if I turn left here, as I mentioned, the clock is actually in this beautiful building that is very famous because that's the building where the Queen Marie Antoinette was imprisoned after the French Revolution. So it is said that even if she was in prison, she was let free sometimes to go to the Sainte-Chapelle, which is the church that I just mentioned, to pray. And that's La Conciergerie. So if you are interested to visit it, just remember to look for La Conciergerie. As it is sunny out, a lot of people come to Quai de Seine, which is like these streets that are now for walking, but before, as you can see, it was a road that was all the time full of cars. And then at some point the city decided to transform it into spaces for people, and then you can just go for a walk. There's some bars, actually very nice in summertime. The idea of these tours is to give you my point of view of the city, and I would love to share these interesting details sometimes, but please let me know if you just prefer to see how the city goes and not necessarily listening from me explanations of the city. Paris is supposed to be one of the densest cities in the world, and I think it's the densest city in the European Union, of course. And it feels like that. It feels like a very crowded city. I have visited other cities before that have very big populations, like for example Mexico City, but you don't feel as much density. And I think it's because those cities are more spread out. And Paris actually is a city that most of the center of the city is still from the 1900s. And of course, I'm not talking about the metropolitan area of the city, which is very, very big, but what we call Paris, which is Paris Intramuros, is like it's still like an old city. So it's not strange to see all that people in the streets every day. On Sundays and on winter Sundays, there's less people because it's cold, and everybody that come during the weekdays stays there in their homes, or they're tired, just like sharing with their families. So the city feels emptier, and it's nicer to walk around. But as soon as you get some sunrise, then it's crowded. So the street is called Quai de la Messagerie, and it's actually a street that takes you directly to the left side of the Louvre. It's also a very nice area to have a view of the city. I'll show you. I hope you can see because there's some sunlight there. There's the Seine River, and there's people walking, and right there you can see that bridge. That's the Pont Neuf, and the Pont Neuf means a new bridge. And new bridge, actually, it's funny because it's one of the oldest bridges in the city. And it's also the only bridge that, even if it had been remodeled, it still has its original architectural design. So right in front of us, we can see that's La Conciergerie in Ile de la Cité. And now in this side, we are in the first arrondissement, the first district. So there's always this, I would say, mobile stores, but they're not necessarily mobile because they're fixed to the wall. And they're very, very famous in Paris because the people that own them, or the people at least that keep them, are called bouquineristes, and they come from bouquin, which is the word for like little book in French. So they're kind of an institution in the city, and they basically close during the winter months, but as soon as spring comes, or as soon as there's a nice day like today, they open them up. So right now, I will cross the street, but before that, I would love to show you this beautiful part. Over there, you can see what I showed you before, which is the Pont Neuf. You can see the Eiffel Tower looming at the back of the bridge. And then you have this beautiful building over here that was recently remodeled, and it's La Samaritaine. And actually, La Samaritaine was rebuilt, I would say, after many years of being closed, in the Art Nouveau style. And actually, I would say La Samaritaine is like Macy's in the US, by, you know, the history and the presence in Parisian culture. So I'll try to cross over here. So Pont Neuf is a very nice bridge. It's very known because it has a statue of a horse and King Henry IV on it. It is actually very well known because this is where you find the station for the line 7, which is also called Pont Neuf, which is that one over there. And here you can see all people walking. They're just sitting, trying to enjoy, because obviously tomorrow it's Monday and people have to go back to work, because people work a lot here, contrary to what is usually believed. Particularly Parisians have very fast-paced lives, like people in big cities like New York and London. I'd say the rhythm is not exactly the same, but it's a very, very fast-paced environment, and particularly when compared to other smaller cities in France. So the Pont Neuf is very interesting because it has, if you can see it, these little balconies where people can just like sit and have pictures. It was like built like 300 years ago, and it's still standing. You really have to watch out a lot here with bikes, because I have to say not everyone stops when there's a red light. And I'm talking about bikes, of course, not the cars. So now we are in Rue de la Monnaie, which is, I would say, Currency Street. And there's this little small square that I come sometimes to sit down, because it's open space. It's not necessarily super crowded. And then you see the Samaritaine and the beautiful Art Nouveau details. I have to say that the first arrondissement, obviously, I think it's the most renowned district in the city, because that's where you have the Louvre, that's where you have the Palais-Royal, Rue de Rivoli goes through it. You find so many monuments. I'd say that it's one of the most touristy districts of the city. However, it's not like a very residential area. I mean, there are people that live here, and I know some people that live here, but obviously it's more expensive than many other neighborhoods, but it's not necessarily the place to live, even if people have the buying power to pay for apartments or rent in these areas. But it's basically, I guess, because the restaurants, the nightlife is not as dynamic as other parts.
Quoi que tu fasses, l'amour est partout où tu regardes. Dans les moindres recoins de l'espace, dans le moindre rêve où tu t'attardes. L'amour comme s'il en pleuvait, nu sur les galets. C'est le temps que je te prévenais. Et si peu, c'est sur mon rêve.
Now we're going to go through part of Rue de Rivoli. And Rue de Rivoli is very well known because it's a very long street. It's not the longest, but it's a very long street of the city, and it has a lot of stores, but also it connects many important buildings and monuments of the city. For example, like the Central City Hall or the Louvre Museum, between others. This street is also a very good example to see the uniformity in the architectural design of the city. And what is particularly interesting is that, as I will show you in other videos of other arrondissement, is that you can actually often have a perspective in the city every time that you turn into a corner. This main artery of the city has changed a lot because it used to be super crowded with cars, and now, if you can see, there's some traffic, but that traffic is only buses and taxis and bikes. If I'm not wrong, after COVID, the city decided that obviously people need to find other ways to transportation. And since everybody was avoiding being in contact with other people, the subway was not the best way to get from point A to point B. So everybody started to use more bikes, and the city facilitated the use of bike lanes. So this street, Rivoli, became a very bike-friendly street. We are at one of the main stations of Line 1, which is Louvre Rivoli, and we're going to cross to get into the block that contains most of the Louvre Museum. One of the main features of this street are the arches, the cover arches that contain many souvenir stores, like those arches over there. And obviously they contain many souvenir stores because the population in this part of Rue de Rivoli and in this part of the first arrondissement is basically people that come from other parts of France as tourists or from other countries because of the Louvre Museum. However, I have to say that in this part of the city, a lot of Parisians come to see it and to just flâner or walk around. Here we enter to one of the inner courts of the Louvre Museum. As a reminder, the Louvre Museum used to be a palace. Used to be one of the palaces of the King of France. And it actually was the main palace for the King of France right before Versailles was built, and then Versailles became the center of power for the country. Before the Louvre Palace, the main palace was the one that I showed you a couple minutes ago, which is the Palais-Royal, where the Sainte-Chapelle was built. So when I was talking about the area that Parisians visit often, it's not necessarily this one, because obviously we want tourists and people to come and visit the city and enjoy it, of course. But this area is more basically for tourists, I have to say. Although, of course, if there's a exposition or there's a special activity, people will come here without any problem. But when I say that Parisians come a lot to this area, I think I refer more to the part where the gardens are, which is the Tuileries, which is the park that is right in front of this area. I personally come often in to this area because I like just walk around and see people from different places, and people are always like happy and having a good time. So it's a very different vibe to the part where people are working or a part where people are living their normal lives. It's a refresh experience. So I'll turn out again here. These passages are really nice because they let you have an insider peek into the Louvre. So you can see, for example, there that even if we are outside, we can see one of the main inner courts. And I think this inner court obviously was not covered before, and they decided to make it part of the museum.
Yeah, pardon.
The Louvre Museum have many different entrances, or at least several different entrances. People usually prefer to go through the main entrance, which is the pyramid entrance, because it's very spectacular and is the most well known. However, it's not the only entrance. I think the best one is the one that is underground, because there's usually no people at all, or basically a few people only, at least the times I've used it. In Paris, we usually refer to stations, and this station is Palais-Royal, Musée du Louvre, and that lets you know exactly where things are located, because you think around a particular station. There's this new building that they have, I'd say, put into this square here. I really like it. I don't know what's inside, let me know if you have some info, but what I like about it is that it blends. So it is hard to see where it starts and where it ends, because in a sunny day like today, it just blends with the sky and it blends with the floor and the people. Now we are in La Comédie Française, which is one of the main classical cities of classical theaters of the city, and that's where you usually go if you want to see a piece of theater, a play by the main French playwriters, like Voltaire, for example. And also one highlight here is the beautiful entrance of the metro station. It's the same metro station that I mentioned a couple minutes before. However, somebody had the idea of make it of beads and silver columns. Now we enter to the Domaine National du Palais-Royal, and in this part you'll find very Instagrammable parts. You will find a nice park and also this art square, I call it. I don't think it's necessarily an art installation because it has been here for a long, long time, and it's a set of black and white striped columns with different levels that you can see people posting pictures on Instagram if you have Instagram for a long time now. No. Although I don't come often here in this barn, I like it because it's open space, beautiful architecture, and there's like a water river, well, like a water fountain that runs underground. So it can be kind of refreshing and during summer, and you can see a lot of people sometimes go here to take beautiful pictures for their weddings. The main part of the domain here is this park that is surrounded by offices, restaurants, and they are at the same time surrounded by beautiful covered arches. And if this place seems familiar to you, is because this is the place. If it happens, you are into this show called Emily in Paris. This is where basically she comes and sits with her friend and have talks about life, about their beautiful lives in the city. But I found it strange though, because in the series she's supposed to live in the Fifth, and even if it's not far, it's true that she has to walk at least like 20 minutes to arrive here. Or maybe she takes the metro, I don't know. You let me know how she probably gets here, but it's a nice place. However, it's very difficult to find a bench. If you can see here, there are not as many benches as we could imagine, and all of them are covered. And it's not very different if it's summertime. One thing that is very different from English gardens or American parks is that there's not a lot of grass. They basically put this kind of, I don't know, it's like calcareous soil. And then I understand it's easier to maintain, but also it's not very nice for your shoes. And it's not as nice as be walking over grass. There's some patches of grass, and it's interesting how they close it, for example, during winter, so that they recover, and by the time people and tourists decide to go out because it's warm enough, they have some patches of of green grass. They do that, for example, in Champ de Mars, and they do that also in Tuileries. But it's true that you don't find as much grass as in English or American parks. It is easy to miss this very nice domain because, well, I say domain as a direct translation of domain, but it's difficult sometimes to find it because if you don't live in the city and you see these like relatively small entrances, then it can be easy to just miss it. Something that is not, I think, very sure online is the fact that in the first district there are a lot of narrow streets that are beautiful and super, super calm, especially at night. And Rue Vivienne is one of those that I consider nice to walk through during the night. So people are making a line here. As usual, you can find many lines in the city, and it's because I think they're going to la Bibliothèque Nationale de France. So there must be an event or something that they consider is worth to wait for in a line. Something I wanted to show you is this Galerie Vivienne. Local is still open, and what it is that at some point in Paris there were many different cover markets I would say that they would be probably the prototype or at least the origin of malls. And one of those cover passages, it's this one, which is called Galerie Vivienne, and it's very beautiful. You can see that it actually keeps many of the details that were created um, in the original design. So you see, there's such a change in the atmosphere. Here we're like about like 150 meters from the Louvre Museum, and then it happens you just come here and you can see this beautiful, quiet square. Well, thank you very much for this adventure with me. I hope you subscribe to this channel. Please let me know what places in Paris you'd love to explore, what kind of activities and buildings and monuments you enjoy the most, and I will make sure that we can explore them together. Take care and subscribe.